The alien war room was dark, lit only by the flickering glow of a giant holographic screen. Around the table sat commanders of one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. They had gathered to review a strange piece of battle footage, an old recording taken from the ruins of a frontier outpost. None of them expected it to be anything unusual. After all, they had crushed countless worlds before. This should have been routine. Yet, when the screen began to play, silence fell across the room. The footage opened with fire and smoke. An entire platoon of alien soldiers moved through the wreckage, weapons raised, their armor glowing faintly in the dim light. Then, out of the haze, a lone figure appeared. At first it was hard to see clearly. The fighter's armor was damaged, cracked, and covered in ash, but the way he moved, fast, precise, and terrifying, caught the attention of everyone watching. He didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. He charged head-on into the squad as though numbers meant nothing to him. The alien soldiers on the screen opened fire. Blasts of energy cut across the battlefield, explosions lighting up the ruins. Yet the lone warrior dodged with impossible speed, rolling across the ground, sliding into cover, and striking back with deadly precision. Every shot he fired seemed to find its mark. Every move he made looked calculated, as if he had already seen the outcome before it even happened. The generals in the war room shifted uncomfortably. They were used to watching battle footage where their enemies screamed, panicked, and broke apart in fear. But this fighter, whoever he was, showed no fear. If anything, he looked like a predator playing with prey. "Who is this mercenary?" one commander finally asked, his voice low and uncertain. Another leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. "Not one of ours. Look at the style. He doesn't fight like the others we've seen. Too fast. Too focused." The footage continued. The warrior dashed into melee range, striking with brutal force. His blade cut through armor like it was nothing. He grabbed enemies, used their bodies as shields, and then threw them aside as if they weighed nothing. With every move, he grew more terrifying. He wasn't just fighting, he was dominating. The alien commanders exchanged glances. They could not place his species. Some suggested he might belong to a hidden empire. Others whispered that he might be a genetically engineered weapon. But none of them dared speak the one truth that lingered in the back of their minds. This fighter was too dangerous to be ordinary. Minutes turned into hours as the footage replayed. Again and again, they watched the lone warrior tear through squads, outsmarting every tactic thrown at him. No reinforcements came to his aid. He fought alone, surrounded, yet unstoppable. His presence on the battlefield shifted the balance in ways no single soldier ever should. The tension in the war room grew heavier. The generals began to argue. This is not natural. No one soldier can defeat so many trained units. It must be some kind of experimental warrior, a weapon we don't understand. Or worse, one voice whispered. A species we underestimated. The others fell silent. The thought unsettled them. On the screen, the warrior was cornered by 3 heavy troopers armed with plasma cannons. By all logic, it should have ended there. But instead, he rushed forward. Plasma blasts tore into the ground, fire erupting around him. Yet when the smoke cleared, he was still standing. His armor was scorched, his movement slower, but his eyes burned with determination. He took down the first trooper with a brutal strike, spun to dodge the second, and then fired point-blank into the third. In less than 10 seconds, all 3 were down. The alien council sat frozen. "This is not a soldier," one commander muttered. "This is a nightmare." The footage zoomed in for the first time, focusing on the fighter's helmet. It was cracked, sparks running across its surface. For a brief second, the visor flickered, showing a glimpse of the face underneath. The image was distorted, unclear. But what little they saw made the commanders lean forward in shock. The face was not alien, not like anything they knew. The warrior's movements carried on, brutal and relentless. But now, curiosity gnawed at the commanders' minds. They replayed the moment again and again, trying to see more. Each time, the same thought returned. Whoever this was, he did not belong to any empire they recognized. He was something else. Something different. Whispers filled the room. Some argued that this was fake, propaganda made to scare them. Others argued that no fabrication could look this real. The way the warrior moved, the way he reacted, the way he fought with instinct. No computer could mimic it, and so the question hung in the air like poison. What was he? The recording ended abruptly, showing nothing but static. Yet the silence it left behind was heavier than any explosion. The commanders sat in their chairs, unwilling to look at each other. Every one of them felt the same fear. They had just witnessed something their empire could not explain. One of them finally spoke, his voice trembling. Find out who, or what, he is. But deep down, none of them were ready for the truth. The war room remained silent long after the recording stopped. The alien commanders stared at the empty screen, as if expecting the figure to reappear from the static. No one dared to speak first. The image of that lone fighter, his cracked helmet and his ruthless efficiency lingered in their minds like a shadow that would not fade. Finally, one commander broke the silence. His voice was rough, uneasy. If that warrior is real, then everything we believe about battle is wrong. The others shifted, their expressions darkening. None wanted to admit it, but the thought had already taken root. Their empire prided itself on overwhelming force, on breaking enemies with numbers and fear. But in the recording, numbers had meant nothing. Fear had meant nothing. One warrior had reduced whole squads to ash, as if their training and weapons were worthless. The footage replayed in their minds. The way he had moved, fast, brutal, yet calm, was not the way of prey. It was the way of a predator that had hunted many times before. This cannot be ignored, another commander said, pounding the table with a heavy fist. If one of them exists, there could be more. The room grew colder. They began analyzing, the details frame by frame. The warrior's weapons were strange, simple, rugged, but devastatingly effective. His rifle spat projectiles instead of energy bolts, tearing through shields and armor like they were nothing. His sidearm was small, yet he wielded it with deadly accuracy. The most terrifying weapon, though, was not his rifle or his blade. It was his mind, the way he adapted, the way he outthought every trap, the way he never hesitated. The generals argued back and forth. Look at the way he moves, one said. That is not instinct, it is training. Long years of training, that means an entire army could fight this way. No army fights like this, another replied, shaking his head. This is something else, maybe a mutation, maybe an accident. But deep down they all felt the same unease. Because if this warrior was not an accident, then a whole species might produce soldiers like him. And if that were true, then their empire was in danger. The war room doors hissed open and a messenger stepped inside holding a data slate. His scales were pale, his hands shaking. He bowed quickly before placing the device on the table. The footage, he said nervously, has already spread across 3 sectors. Black markets, encrypted channels, even rival empires. Everyone is watching it. A ripple of alarm passed through the council. If their enemies had seen this too, panic would spread across the galaxy. Armies would question their strength. Civilizations would wonder if the great empire was truly invincible. Shut it down, one general ordered. Erase it. Block the channels. Destroy every copy. But the messenger only lowered his head. It is too late. Once something is seen, it cannot be unseen. The commanders fell into silence again. The footage returned to the screen, looping endlessly. They stared at the warrior's movements once more. This time, fear was sharper. Every strike, every calculated move seemed louder than before. They imagined themselves in the place of those soldiers on the screen, facing this figure alone. The thought chilled them. Whispers began spreading beyond the war room, too. Soldiers in barracks replayed the video in secret, their confidence shaken. Civilians whispered rumors in markets and taverns. Some claimed the warrior was a ghost, an ancient being awakened from legend. Others swore it was a weapon created by forgotten gods. Yet the truth was stranger still. He was human, though none of the aliens had realized it yet. In the council chamber, a young strategist spoke carefully. If he is real, then we must prepare. We must strengthen our fleets, reinforce every world, and prepare for them. Them, one commander echoed. The strategist nodded. If one exists, there are more. And if more exist, then a world gave birth to them. A world we have ignored. The council members shifted uneasily. They all knew the world he referred to. A small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. A planet known for little, dismissed as unimportant. Too wild, too primitive. Earth. But none dared to speak its name aloud. Not yet. Instead, they argued again, clinging to denial. It is impossible. If they had this strength, they would have revealed themselves long ago. Perhaps they hide it. Perhaps they wait for the right moment. Or, perhaps, one commander whispered, this one warrior is only the beginning. The debate turned to shouting, fear mixing with pride, anger mixing with doubt. Yet even as they argued, all of them kept stealing glances at the frozen image on the screen, the cracked helmet, the shadow of a human face beneath. None admitted it, but the truth gnawed at them. Outside the chamber, the galaxy was already reacting. Pirate bands were refusing contracts. Rival empires were building defenses. Merchants were spreading tales of the lone warrior who fought like death itself. Some laughed at the stories, calling them exaggerations, but others prepared in silence, knowing deep inside that no empire laughed forever. The commanders sat in their chamber until the lights dimmed, until the screen finally flickered off. Yet the fear remained. For the first time in generations, they faced an enemy they could not understand. And in the deepest corners of their minds, one question grew heavier with every passing moment. What if this warrior was not alone? The alien council gathered again the next cycle, their war room filled with the heavy silence of dread. The footage had spread far wider than they expected. What was once their private discovery had become a storm across the stars. Every admiral, every governor, and even common citizens whispered about the mysterious warrior. Some claimed he was a demon. Others said he was an ancient weapon reborn. But none had spoken the most terrifying truth. Not yet. The generals ordered the footage, slowed to a crawl. Frame by frame, they studied the movements, the armor, the weapons, and finally, the crack in the helmet. The closer they looked, the more uneasy they became. Beneath the flickering visor, there was a glimpse of a face. Not scaled, not furred, not chitin-covered. Smooth, pale, eyes burning with a strange light that no one in the room recognized. One commander leaned forward, his voice shaking. That cannot be. Another snapped. It is impossible. That species is nothing. They were never a threat. They barely leave their own system. But the image did not lie. They zoomed again, enhancing the blurred frames until the truth was undeniable. The warrior was no alien mercenary, no secret construct, no forgotten god. He was human. The war room fell into stunned silence. For a long moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The galaxy's most underestimated species had just torn through trained soldiers as if they were insects. Humans, one admiral finally whispered, the word heavy on his tongue. A primitive race, weak bodies, short lifespans, fragile, and, yet, he gestured toward the screen where the human continued his rampage. This one fights like death itself. The others struggled to accept it. For centuries, humans were dismissed as backward, clinging to a planet full of storms, oceans, and unstable lands. Their world was called a death world, not because of its people, but because of its violent nature. Most believed the humans would remain trapped there forever. Now, this recording showed otherwise. The warrior fought with an intensity none of them had seen. Every move carried purpose. Every strike was brutal and efficient. He was not faster because of technology. He was faster because of will. This is why, a strategist said quietly, their world forged them. A planet that tries to kill its children every day. They are not weak. They are survivors. The council stirred. For the first time, they began to understand. What the galaxy mocked as weakness was in fact the very reason humans were dangerous. Fragile bodies meant sharper instincts. Short lives meant greater drive. A hostile homeworld meant endless adaptation. But the revelation did not bring respect. It brought fear. If one human can do this, a commander growled, what happens when more arrive? What happens if they bring fleets? The war room darkened as the screen replayed the battle again. The human's cracked helmet slipped fully from his head in the recording. His face was revealed in full, bloodied, scarred, but alive. His eyes burned with fury, not fear. Even surrounded, even wounded, he refused to fall. The commanders stared at those eyes. Cold, relentless, not prey. Predator. Panic began to set in. They cannot be allowed to spread, one shouted. We must cut them off, destroy them before they grow, another countered, voice trembling. Destroy them? Did you not see? Numbers mean nothing to them. Traps mean nothing. Fear means nothing. If we strike them and fail. He did not finish. He did not have to. The thought was clear. If their mighty empire failed against humans, the galaxy would see. And once the galaxy saw, no one would fear them anymore. The council sat frozen, trapped between pride and terror. Some wanted to erase Earth before it was too late. Others wanted to study humans to learn how they became this way. But deep down, all of them shared the same truth. The galaxy had changed. The footage had revealed something that could never be forgotten. Beyond the council chamber, the revelation spread like wildfire. Soldiers whispered that the warrior was human. Civilians argued over it in taverns and markets. Some laughed, refusing to believe such a fragile species could be so dangerous. But others prepared quietly, stocking weapons, building fortifications, and watching the stars with unease. On distant worlds, rulers debated whether to ally with humans or prepare to fight them. Pirates refused to raid human trade ships, fearing the stories might be true. Even rival empires began rethinking their plans, wondering if humanity would rise faster than anyone predicted. Back in the war room, the footage looped one final time. The human stood alone among the bodies of fallen enemies, his chest heaving, his eyes unbroken. He raised his weapon, ready for another fight even when none remained. The image froze there. A commander finally broke the silence, his voice cold and heavy. This was one man. One human. Imagine what happens when their armies arrive. The words hung in the air like a curse. No one dared to answer, because deep down every one of them already knew. The galaxy was no longer safe. Humanity was coming. The revelation spread faster than light. What began as whispers in a single council chamber soon echoed through entire star systems. Merchants carried the story from port to port. Smugglers uploaded the footage to black networks, and by the time the council realized what had happened, it was already too late. The galaxy had seen the face beneath the cracked helmet. It was human. On trading stations along the outer rim, crowds gathered around small screens watching the footage in stunned silence. They saw a lone warrior stand against an army. They saw alien soldiers fall one by one, their weapons useless against him. And when the helmet fell away, they saw the human face, bloodied, fierce, and unbroken. Some gasped. Some laughed nervously, refusing to believe what their eyes told them. But many felt something deeper, something that crawled into their bones: fear. In military academies across the stars, instructors paused their lessons. Cadets watched the recording again and again, analyzing every move. Some dismissed it as an exaggeration, a trick of the camera. But the silence in the room after every replay told a different story. They all knew that no trick could fake such raw brutality, such instinct. Even the great empires, who once dismissed Earth as a forgotten world, began to take notice. Leaders sat in their halls, advisors whispering in their ears. Some demanded immediate action, calling for fleets to be sent to Earth before it was too late. Others counseled patience, warning that rash moves could awaken something far worse. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's rulers hesitated. On frontier worlds, fear turned to chaos. Colonists looked at the stars and wondered if humans were coming for them. Rumors spread like wildfire. Humans could fight without weapons. Humans could breathe toxic air. Humans could see in the dark. None of these were true, but truth no longer mattered. Fear fed itself, and the galaxy trembled. In the war room where it all began, the alien council watched helplessly as their control slipped away. They had tried to suppress the footage, but suppression only made it spread faster. Now every being in the galaxy wanted to see the human warrior. His image had become a symbol. One commander slammed his fist against the table. "This is dangerous. If we let this continue, every empire will fear us less and fear them more. We will lose our place at the top." Another responded quietly, "Perhaps we already have." The screen replayed the moment where the human's helmet cracked apart, his face revealed, his eyes glowing with rage. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. The council members no longer argued whether it was real. They argued what to do next. "Destroy them now," one shouted. "Erase their world before they spread further." "Fool," another hissed. "If one man can do this, what if there are thousands, millions? If we attack and fail, our empire is finished." The debate grew louder, angrier, until it echoed through the chamber like thunder. Some demanded war, others demanded secrecy, and a few whispered the unthinkable: alliances. For the first time, the mighty empire considered bending to a species they once mocked. Beyond the chamber, soldiers whispered in their barracks. Many had seen the footage and no longer laughed at the mention of humans. Some began to fear being deployed anywhere near their system. A few even deserted, vanishing into the outer sectors. Among common people, a strange mix of emotions grew. Some were afraid of humans. Others admired them. On certain worlds, underground groups began painting the human warrior's image on walls, calling him a hero, a liberator, even a savior. To them, humanity was not a threat. It was hope against the empires that ruled them. The galaxy fractured. Fear pulled some into paranoia. Hope pulled others into rebellion. And at the center of it all was a single human face, caught on a battlefield, refusing to fall. The alien council sat late into the cycle, exhausted by arguments, with no answers. At last the eldest of them spoke. His voice was low, but it cut through the noise. "You are all blind. The question is not what we will do to them. The question is what they will do to us." The words silenced the chamber, because deep down, everyone already knew the truth. Humanity was rising, not quietly, not slowly, but like a storm tearing across the stars. The footage was not just a warning, it was a glimpse of the future. And in that future, the galaxy would no longer belong to the old empires. It would belong to humanity. On distant worlds, leaders felt the same dread. They imagined fleets of humans arriving, each soldier as fierce as the one in the recording. They imagined their armies falling, their ships burning, their worlds trembling. And none could answer the question that haunted them all. If one human could shake the galaxy, what would happen when the rest arrived? The council chamber felt colder than ever before. The alien generals sat in silence, each staring at the frozen image of the human warrior on the screen. His face was bloodied, his eyes burning with fury, and yet he stood tall among the bodies of their finest soldiers. To them, it was no longer just footage. It was a prophecy. Days had passed since the recording spread across the galaxy, but the storm it created only grew stronger. Entire empires debated what humanity's rise would mean. Armies prepared for wars they had never imagined fighting. Merchants whispered of new opportunities. Civilians spoke of freedom, rebellion, or terror. Every corner of the galaxy now lived under the shadow of a single truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was something else. The council members had watched the footage hundreds of times, each time hoping to see weakness. They searched for hesitation, for fear, for any sign that the human was just another warrior who got lucky. But every replay told them the same thing. He fought not because he was fearless, but because fear did not control him. He fought like someone who had lived his whole life in danger, someone who had learned to turn survival into a weapon. Finally, One of the youngest commanders dared to speak. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the heavy air. "This was never just a battle," he said. "This was a message." The others turned toward him, frowns forming. "A message?" one scoffed. He was alone, surrounded. He fought because he had no choice. The young commander shook his head. "No. Look at his eyes." He knew the recording would be seen. He knew someone would find it. "He left it for us." Unease rippled through the room. They had all felt something unnatural in the way the human carried himself, but none had dared put it into words. Now the thought clawed at their minds. Could it be true? Could this one man have fought not just to survive, but to send a warning to the galaxy? The eldest of the council leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the frozen image. If it was a message, then what was he telling us? The chamber fell silent again, each of them unwilling to speak the answer aloud, because they all already knew. The message was clear: humanity is coming. Beyond the council, events unfolded quickly. Smaller empires, long crushed under the weight of the great powers, began whispering of alliances with Earth. Some saw the humans as a weapon they could use. Others saw them as liberators. Even those who feared them could not ignore the truth. The galaxy's balance of power was shifting. On distant worlds, ordinary people began to paint the human warrior's image on walls, banners, and ships. He became a symbol of resistance, a face of defiance. Even those who had never met a human spoke his name with reverence. The empires that once laughed at Earth now realized that laughter had turned to silence. Inside the war room, the commanders argued again. Some demanded that Earth be destroyed before humanity could rise. Others demanded diplomacy, though they admitted they had no idea how to speak to a species that fought like this. A few remained silent, haunted by a darker fear, that nothing could stop humans once they decided to move. The debate lasted hours, but no decision came. Every option felt like a trap: attack and risk awakening an unstoppable enemy. Wait and risk letting humanity grow stronger. Ally and risk being devoured. Later, for the first time in memory, the great empire faced an enemy they did not know how to fight. Finally, the eldest stood once more. His voice was deep and heavy, each word carrying the weight of fear. The galaxy has seen the recording. They will prepare. They will fear. But remember this: fear can be more dangerous than war. Fear creates cracks. Cracks become collapse. And this human, whether he meant to or not, has cracked the galaxy. The council sat frozen. Because they knew he was right. The footage was no longer just an accident of war. It was no longer just a recording of a single man's survival. It had become something far greater, an idea. And ideas could not be killed no matter how many fleets you sent. The image of the human warrior remained frozen on the screen, his eyes burning into theirs. Even in silence, the message was loud enough to shake empires. One human had done this. One. And the galaxy would never be the same again.